Semiconductors have become an extremely important part of human lives today. Electronic chips are now in everything, all objects around us, from the washing machines to cars to smartphones, laptops, tablets. The deployment in almost every object we use in our everyday life has made them an extremely lucrative market. From an industry worth $412 billion worldwide in 2019 to $580 billion in 2022, and is expected to reach trillions in 2030. In August 2022, U.S. President Joe Biden signed into law the CHIPS and Science Act, aimed at re-establishing United States leadership in semiconductor manufacturing, shoring up global supply chains, and strengthening national and economic security. The CHIPS Act of 2022 created the International Technology Security and Innovation, or ITSE Fund, which provides the U.S. Department of State with $500 million, $100 million per year over 5 years, starting in fiscal year 2023, to promote the development and adoption of secure and trustworthy telecommunications networks and ensure semiconductor supply chain security and diversification.
Hello and welcome to BizLine. I'm Lina Phat. Recently, the semiconductor has been a hot topic discussed in Vietnam. And to understand more about the U.S. interest in investing and collaborating with Vietnam to develop the country's semiconductor sector, I had a discussion with U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam, Mark Napper. Well, Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us for today's interview. And I really want to learn more about the U.S. interest in the high-tech sector development here in Vietnam. So I would love to hear from you.
Sure, well, it's my pleasure. I mean, this is a very important subject and a very important area of U.S.-Vietnam cooperation. So I'm happy for the opportunity to chat today.
Thank you. I want to go back a little bit. Last year, 2023, September, U.S. President Joe Biden visited Vietnam, and the two countries elevated our relationship to comprehensive strategic partnerships. And the U.S. affirmed its commitment to increasing support for Vietnam in the training and development of high-tech workforce. And it also mentioned the initial seed funding of $2 million from the U.S. government. To support Vietnam to train the human resource for semiconductor. What can you say about how CHIPS Act and ITSE Fund can help Vietnam develop the semiconductor industry?
Well, it's a great question. I think the key phrase in there is initial seed funding. Yes, we have budgeted $2 million to work with Vietnam on helping to develop an innovation economy, helping to develop the kind of workforce necessary to thrive and prosper in the 21st century. But we're looking forward to expanding upon that $2 million through various ways. Recently, we announced an additional $13.8 million, which will be used through one of our great universities, Arizona State University, to work collaboratively with Vietnamese higher education institutions on things like workforce development, upgrading university curricula, looking at ways to work with the private sector, academics, and the U.S. government on sort of a holistic approach to helping Vietnam to build the kind of workforce it needs to move up the value chain, to expand global supply chains in high-tech areas like semiconductors. Of course, part and parcel to this is existing programs through like Fulbright, for example. We've got a great track record of Fulbright helping to educate master's degree students, PhD students. Over the years, we've educated approximately 600, and we've expanded the Fulbright program now to include STEM fields. We've got a new Vietnam student researcher program under the Fulbright, which will help to promote Vietnamese PhD students to go to the United States, study in STEM fields for up to a year, and then come back, bring their new skills, their new knowledge to help Vietnam again to move up the supply chain to build the kind of 21st century high-tech economy that it aspires to.
So we think the fund is best used in human resources training.
When we look at creation of a more high-tech economy here, when we look at efforts to build a semiconductor sort of nexus here in Vietnam, I think we look at it in terms of ecosystem, right? And you can't just come build a factory and then walk away. I mean, it's about creating the necessary ecosystem to be enticing, to be inviting for foreign investors, American high-tech investors to want to come here, to want to invest, help train the workforce themselves. And so when we talk about ecosystem, of course, it is things like having the kind of workforce, high-tech workforce, that can work in the kind of high-tech factory of the 21st century. And that's where a lot of this funding we talk about, the CHIPS Act, ITSE funding comes in, because that can be used to collaborate between American institutions, Vietnamese institutions, to develop curricula, to train students in high-tech sectors, computer science, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, the kind of fields that are necessary. But when we talk about ecosystem, it's not just workforce, it's also things like access to reliable sources of what we hope are clean energy, right? It's an inviting regulatory environment as well. It has to be ensure that the regulatory environment here, that the environment for, if a company wants to come, they seek approvals, they seek licenses, they seek incentives, that these things can be processed quickly enough. These companies, I mean, it's a competitive world out there, right? So the quicker and more efficiently, more smoothly that not just the central government, but provincial governments can process applications, licenses, incentives, approvals for companies that want to come, then I think the more inviting an environment you'll have here. The recent announcement of the direct power purchase agreement mechanism to allow companies to invest and then to have contracts directly with renewable energy sources, wind farms, solar farms. The U.S. has worked with Vietnam the past 7 years on this, and we finally got it done. And I think this is just one example of how the U.S. has been very persistent and very forward-looking, working with Vietnam. And now with this new direct power purchase agreement mechanism, companies can come here assured that they'll have access to clean energy, renewable energy.
As the largest city in central Vietnam and one of the 5 biggest cities in Vietnam, Danang is the powerhouse for the socio-economic development of the central region and Central Highlands. Danang Hightech Park, the only high-tech park in the central region and one of the 3 national high-tech parks in Vietnam, offers exceptional investment incentives and supports to investors, acting as a driving force for the development of the whole region. 22,000 annual graduates promise a potential labor market that meets the needs of a variety of industries in fields, especially high-tech and IT industries. The regulatory environment is being improved with streamlined administration procedures.
Đà Nẵng có 1,2 triệu dân. Năm 2022 đấy, là cả Đà Nẵng làm ra có 5 tỷ đô thôi. Còn cái thu ngân sách có 1 tỷ đô thôi. Trong lúc là một cái công ty công nghệ như là Synopsys chẳng hạn là người ta chỉ có 20.000 người thôi, thì một năm người ta làm ra 6 tỷ đô, tức là cũng tương đương với Đà Nẵng. Vậy thì chúng ta hy vọng là khi Đà Nẵng phát triển công nghệ cao, công nghệ bán dẫn thì sẽ có những cái công ty lớn hàng tỷ đô như là Synopsys đặt những cái trụ sở tại Đà Nẵng. Lãnh đạo Đà Nẵng hoàn toàn hiểu cái điều này. Và chính vì có thể là do Đà Nẵng nhỏ bé cũng hết đất để làm những cái công nghiệp thông thường rồi, cho nên là bây giờ cái chương trình mà thu hút công nghệ cao ấy là được rất là sôi nổi.
Danang leaders met with big names in the semiconductor industry and sought cooperation opportunities. One of the most recent trips in August 2024 was to visit the world's leading chip foundry technology company TSMC to cooperate in training semiconductor human resources for design units, as well as TSMC factories in Taiwan of China, Japan, and the United States. The delegation also visited the Taiwan Semiconductor Research Institute to discuss cooperation opportunities in the field of pilot-scale production of chip products designed by research groups and universities in Da Nang and Vietnam.
You mentioned about efforts from provincial level. You have visited many localities in Vietnam, including Danang. Can you share your thoughts on what Danang is doing today to transform itself from a tourism-based economy to a high-tech hub?
Well, I mean, Danang is a great example of a locality, of a provincial government that is seeking to again build this ecosystem that's so necessary to be welcoming to foreign companies that want to invest. And we work very closely with them, sharing ideas about how they can create an environment more enticing to foreign investment. And there are really unique programs underway in which you've got Danang provincial government, you've got an American company like Synopsys, a university like Phenica, working together to help create university and workforce training curricula, again, creating this ecosystem, this environment that will bring in foreign investment like Synopsys, like others.
I know that companies like Intel, TSMC, and Samsung have decided to open fabs in Arizona, and they will need engineers from all over the world, including Vietnam. However, obtaining visas to work in the US is quite complicated. What can be done to help support Vietnamese talents in working in the US?
We're very proud of the fact that we've got over 30,000 Vietnamese students in the United States right now. And Vietnam is the number 5 sending nation to study in the United States. Interestingly, if you expand the definition of studying in the U.S. to things like, short-term programs, summer camp, 2 or 3 week exchange activities, online classes, if you consider all of those things together, the number of Vietnamese students who have a sort of touch point with the American education system jumps from 30,000 to 300,000. And that doesn't even count, for example, the training that workers are receiving from their employers. For example, Synopsys, or people who are going online and getting certificates in specialized areas from Google or from Meta or Amazon Web Services. And so when we do see applicants come to the embassy to apply for visa, we try to make it as smooth as possible. Once students wrap up their studies in the U.S., we have a program called OPT, Optional Practical Training, which is up to 2 years a student can, once they've graduated, once they've received a degree, they can remain in the U.S. and, as the name implies, get practical training at a company or some other organization, which will enhance their skills, enhance their experience, and basically allow them, once they come back, say, to Vietnam, they'll be much more experienced and able to contribute to Vietnam. But typically, if a company is seeking to send one of their employees to the U.S., there are specific visa categories that would apply for this individual. They could go, for example, on an exchange program and participate in something called Early Career STEM Research Initiative, which is a way for institutions here to send people to the U.S., to partner institutions.
The ITSE fund under the CHIP Act has decided to support Vietnam in assembly, test, and packaging, or ATP. So do you think ITSE will also support Vietnam in integrated circuit or IC design?
Well, I think one of the, misconceptions is that when you look at the semiconductor supply chain, ATP, assembly, testing, packaging, is somehow at the bottom, the bottom rung of or the bottom link of the supply chain, when in fact, assembly, testing, packaging, which Vietnam excels at, requires a lot of very highly skilled, highly trained workers, engineers, computer scientists. And so I think, while Vietnam continues to attract investment in the area of ATP, for example, last year a company called Amcor opened a factory not too far from Hanoi. Their specialty is ATP. I think there will remain many opportunities for ATP to be a real generator of prosperity for Vietnam, while also helping to nurture high-tech workers and build a high-tech ecosystem. In the meantime, though, certainly there are opportunities here, I think, for IC chip design. I think the talent for sure is here. At least that's what the experts tell me. Vietnam does have a lot of very talented engineers and computer scientists who can work in chip design, and there are companies like Synopsys, of course, Marvell, others that have already set up shop here, wanting to take advantage of this talent. But in the meantime, we do have programs. I think USAID, for example, is working with Vietnamese institutions of higher learning to develop curricula to promote education for IC design. And so it's a great opportunity, certainly. I think there's no reason why Vietnam can't continue to excel in ATP while also branching out into other areas like chip design.
Training human resources in the semiconductor industry is a crucial step in integrating Vietnam into the global semiconductor supply chain. It typically takes 6 years to fully train a microchip engineer. If the training starts now, it will take 4 years of foundational education and an additional 1 to 2 years of specialized training. This means that the first batch of engineers would graduate by 2030. Therefore, the goal of having 50,000 IC engineers in Vietnam by 2030 is an ambitious goal, and this necessitates the innovative training model. The private sector is actively engaging with the government to come up with new training model. Notably, the Phenica Semiconductor Training Center, or PSTC, exemplifies this approach by offering comprehensive training solutions. Their model combines practical training with academic instruction, aligns with industry needs, and partners with leading global players in the semiconductor sector.
Nhất là chương trình của trung tâm là rất là tiêu chuẩn quốc tế, được chuyển giao từ tập đoàn nổi tiếng Synopsys của Mỹ. Thứ hai là trung tâm của Phenica có đầu tư cái cơ sở vật chất về hệ thống máy chủ hiện đại nhất Đông Nam Á. Ở phía trung tâm có 2 hệ thống máy chủ là GPU4 và GPU5, là một trong những hệ thống rất là hiện đại. Cộng với đấy là các hệ thống về máy chủ lớn HPC được đào tạo bởi các chuyên gia hàng đầu đến từ Synopsys, cũng như là các chuyên gia hàng đầu về vi mạch tại Việt Nam, cũng như là các cái đối tác của trung tâm tại các cơ sở ở Việt Nam và quốc tế. Chương trình có cái cam kết về đầu ra, và cuối cùng là có những cái ưu đãi đặc biệt, 100% các học viên ra tốt nghiệp sẽ có việc làm với mức đãi ngộ rất là tốt.
International cooperation with U.S. partners exemplifies this university's commitment to creating a world-class training environment. In early August, U.S. Ambassador to Vietnam Mark Knapper and his delegation visited Phenica University. They toured the university's facilities, which housed some of the most advanced server systems in Southeast Asia.
We are the only one in Southeast Asia to do this.
And engaged with students in the Train the Trainer program.
What is your advice for students?
In chip design and other high-tech areas.
This visit opens up numerous new opportunities for collaboration and potential partnership between Vietnamese corporations and U.S. entities.
What are the challenges do you think the country needs to overcome?
It's a very competitive world out there right now, and there are other countries that are also hungry for the kind of investment, the same investment that Vietnam seeks. And so I think Vietnam has to, it's like running a race. It's all about the ecosystem, right? It's all about ensuring that you've got the right regulatory environment, that investors can come here, they can go to one place, like a one-stop shop, and get the approvals and licenses or whatever they need. And they need to know they can do it quickly. Just making sure that you're nimble, you're agile, you're able to respond to the needs of investors. And I mean, it's a challenge, yes, but one I know that Vietnam can certainly meet and overcome. I think as we saw again with the announcement of the direct power purchase agreement mechanism, I mean, that's a huge step forward in creating an environment attractive to foreign investors. And I think just continuing to take bold steps like that, continuing to take innovative actions to make Vietnam attractive will help in the end Vietnam to win the race.
You've been here before. What do you think about the development, and what do you think is the most interesting to notice?
So I was here 20 years ago, right, 2004 to 2007, and of course, Hanoi, Vietnam were much different places back then. I returned after 20 years, and Vietnam is a strong member of global ATP supply chains now. Vietnam is assembling electric cars and electric batteries. Vietnamese medical institutions are performing very difficult medical procedures and transplant operations. I mean, these are things that 20 years ago we certainly dreamed about, but to see it a reality, I think speaks so much to, I think, just the diligence and the high skills and the commitment to education and excellence that Vietnamese researchers and students have, that Vietnamese companies and business people have, the Vietnamese government has. Setting one's mind to achieving something and getting it done. I mean, that's what I see over the last 20 years, that Vietnam has set for itself this course to become a more high-tech economy, a wealthier economy, and it's happening, right? And it doesn't just happen. It happens because of intention and because of policy and because of a will to succeed. And I've just been so impressed with the changes since I was last here, and I have no reason to doubt that over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we're going to continue to see this upward trajectory in which Vietnam's aspirations of becoming a, green economy, clean economy, digital economy, high-tech economy, that these aspirations will continue to be fulfilled. Because I believe in the Vietnamese people, I believe in just the hard work and diligence necessary to achieve these, I think are in Vietnamese people's DNA. So I'm very optimistic for Vietnam's future.
Yeah. So do you think the determination to play a part in the global supply chain of the semiconductor is achievable for
Absolutely.
Vietnam?
I have no doubt. Vietnam's off to a great start. Again, it's about the ecosystem, right? It's about the regulatory environment. It's about access to clean and reliable energy. It's about having a high-tech workforce. I think if these conditions continue to be fulfilled, then there's no reason why foreign companies, American companies, would not want to come here.
Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And that's it for this episode of BizLine. Thank you very much for watching. To rewatch our program, you can log on to our website or tune in our YouTube channel at youtube.com/VTV4go. Thank you for watching and see you again next time.